whenever you have to rely on your opponent's schedule and your opponent's win percentage instead of having control of your own fate. So this way, this format, it actually is going to make it so that you determine your own fate. You don't have to rely on how your opponent does.
Yeah, and what's really cool is that for those of you at home, if you're considering attending the Pokemon World Championships in Anaheim in August, the Anaheim Open Tournament will also feature this way to handle Top Cut. So just, again, another great opportunity to take your fate into your own hands and, you know, play those games, win those games, and move on to Top Cut on your own accord.
Yeah, and, you know, going back to the previous match, you know, watching Cesar play Gary Chan, of course, you know, Latin America, you know, making their way to day 2 representing the Latin American team. There's a couple of Latin American players. Also, there's a fair amount of European players as well, and a lot of players from the United States. Of course, there's also Christopher Kahn from Australia, also representing the Oceania region. So a lot of very diverse representation here in this top 36 that we have currently moved on to.
Yeah, it's really an international championship. We have players from all around the world competing here today. Some of these trainers actually earned their invite here to play. They were flown out. They get to come out here from their home countries and really show the world what they have. And I'm so excited to see them, you know, keep playing moving forwards.
But it's not over yet for a lot of the players, because a lot of players still do need to have very strong finishes here at the North American International Championships in order to qualify for the World Championship. Some players need top 4s. Some players straight up need to have the win here, you know, winning the entire championship. You know, a lot of players yesterday, I've talked about this before, a lot of players, you know, they were shooting for maybe a top 128, top 64 in order to qualify for the World Championships invite. You know, some players needed a deeper run, and some players are currently in position and in striking distance of that too. So I've been in that position before where I know how it feels to kind of whiff on your World's invite by a little bit, by just a little bit. So there's still going to be a lot of intense matches. A lot is on the line. You know, there's always cash prizes, scholarship prizes as well. Of course, championship points. We've talked about that, the importance of that, and also pride to become the first ever North American International Champion.
Yeah, and it's been a long time since we've had one of those titles on the line like this. I mean, barring all the other international championships that have happened this year. So it's really quite an accomplishment to join the 3 other trainers so far who have clinched that title and probably will be looking to defend it in the future. But even if you can't defend it, you can still say, well, I was the first North American International Champion.
Well, going back to the Latin American storyline, of course, you know, the European International Championships was won by Miguel Martí de la Torre from Spain, a European. Oceania was won by Zoe Liu from the Oceania region. Of course, the story of Latin America in Brazil was that Ashton Cox from the United States actually won the international championship down there. So maybe, you know, Cesar kind of wants a little bit of revenge, take back one title for the Latin American community.
Oh, definitely. And don't forget Barris's challenge that he made on stream yesterday. I mean, I think Europe's out gunning for the title as well. So really, nobody's safe. Everybody really has to make sure they keep bringing their A game throughout the remainder of Swiss here today.
Yeah, oh boy, it's still going to be a lot of exciting matches. I mean, a lot of top players that we all recognize from streams before, you know, they actually bowed out really early into the tournament. Wolf Glick unfortunately dropped at, I believe, 2 and 3. Aaron's Cybertron Zhang, our fellow co-commentator who decided to compete, actually was just 1 win away from qualifying for day 2. So, you know, this is a very tough field of players. We have to emphasize that because this is on an international level.
It really is, but for those of you who are fans of Wolf or Aaron, I believe they both earned their Day 1 Worlds invite. So
yes,
we will be seeing them in August, but I think they were both looking to have a strong performance here to sort of, you know, go into the tournament feeling a little bit more confident, but it just goes to show you, Pokemon's one of those games where you have to keep practicing, you have to keep training, team building. Really, just because you were able to clinch a title once doesn't mean that you'll necessarily be able to make it to the top every single time.
Absolutely, and I believe we actually have our match pulled coming into Swiss round 12 now. It's only round 3 of day 2, but these players have played 12 rounds of Swiss the entire weekend. It is going to be between Arsal Puri and Alvin Hidayat.
So Arsal, I believe, was on stream for one of your games yesterday.
He was. He was one of the last matches that we streamed. He barely made it to day 2. He obviously had to play a win-in versus, well, two-time regional champion, former national champion Gavin Michael. So that's a tough opponent to see. And even in his interview with Anna, Arsal mentioned that, you know, the last person that you really want to see having to play that win-in is going to be a player of Gavin's caliber. I don't know exactly how many championship points Arsal stands at, but he needs a deep finish here today in order to qualify for the World Championships.
Plus, if he was in a win-in round yesterday, that means that he's already had at least 2 losses on his Swiss record, which means he can't afford to take many more if he wants to continue that deep run into the international championships here.
Alvin Hidayat, on the other hand, also had to play, I believe, a win-in, or he was 7-1 by the time he actually was the 36th seed, or the 30. He finished 36th yesterday, the last X and 2 to make it all the way to day 2. He actually just qualified for the World Championships with his finish here.
Oh, that's awesome! Congratulations, Alvin. That must be a load off his back, though, knowing that he can just play the tournament now to enjoy it, maybe get a few extra points, rather than have to play the tournament to get his Worlds invite.
Oh, absolutely.
It's always a sigh of relief, right? It is a sigh of relief to finally get that Worlds invite.
You know, it's always nice to be able to get that qualification for the World Championships, and at that point, yeah, at that point, it's good. You know, you feel a bit more secure.
Definitely, and you know, when there's already so much pressure on you in this day 2 of the tournament, being able to take any stress off is just, you know, an additional way to relax, maybe focus in, and could actually give him an advantage throughout the day in comparison to those trainers who are still trying to earn that invite.
Yeah. You know, going down this list, there's also a lot of the players on the other end of the championship point spectrum that don't need deep finishes, that already have thousands of championship points. Of course, we saw in the first round, Marcus Datter versus Nick Navarre.
Yeah, both those trainers, I think, are pretty high up there in terms of their point count right now.
Over 1,000.
That's actually really impressive. I mean, I remember back a few years ago when, like, having 100 championship points was, like, a huge accomplishment.
Back maybe in 2013, I think you needed about 250 to qualify for the World Championships, and now players are quadrupling that number.
So Nick would have qualified for the World Championships 4 times over if he were playing back then.
I mean, right now he's already qualified for the World Championship 2 times over with the 500-seat championship bar that is set for North America. It's very impressive. I know. I don't think I have. How many championship points do you have?
Let's not talk about that.
I have 0 right now.
Oh,
I have
okay.
0.
We can be friends. It's okay.
0 championship point buddies. Of course, you know, maybe we'll change that up next year. You know, it might be the end of the season, but it's always fun to look forward to what could possibly be, you know, the future, right? You know, if you guys are enjoying what you're seeing here, you guys want to come out. Pokemon has such great events. The community is so amazing to be a part of. You make friends, you meet new people, and the most important thing, of course, is you get to play the game that you absolutely love.
Yeah, so speaking of future tournaments, you know, real quick, there is a regional coming up in Liverpool, but let's talk about that later because it looks like these trainers are ready to go. Maybe in a couple more minutes, maybe telling their friends, you know, online that they're about to be featured on stream. Always a fun accomplishment.
They're probably using the hashtag #PlayPokemon to discuss.
I would hope so, yeah.
Yeah, on your left, of course, is Arsal Puri, and on the right is going to be Alvin Hidayat. Looks like both players aren't exactly set up just yet, but they are almost ready to go here.
You know, I love Alvin's shirt. It's been so long since I've thought about Pokemon Battle Revolution, you know, that game that came out a few years back.
Oh, yeah.
Speaking of old formats, that was how I practiced for tournaments back in the day.
That was actually how I practiced, too. Playing getting randomly matched up. You know, that was one of the first platforms that allowed us to.
Yeah, we've come so far. Now you can just hop on BattleSpot. You know, we have a championship ladder where you can play the VGC 2017 rules to practice for upcoming tournaments. It's a lot. It's great. I love it. It's a lot easier, actually. So let's talk a little bit about the teams that we're about to see. I mean, you saw Arsal play yesterday. What kind of team is he running?
He is going to be running Tapu Koko. He is also going to be running Kartana. He is going to be running Tapu Fini. Oh, man, I'm blanking right now as to what the other 3 were. But Arcanine, Tapu Koko.
Oh, so kind of a standard team, it sounds like, based off of what you just said, which is an approach that a lot of players, I think, are taking going into this tournament, deciding to run those Pokemon that can get consistent results and then relying more so on their ability to make reads, make plays, than, maybe bringing, quote-unquote, the play to win them the tournament.
Yeah, and of course, now we do know for sure Arsal had a Mudsdale as well and a Porygon too to round out the 4 of Kartana, Tapu Fini, Arcanine, and Tapu Koko. On the other side of the field, Alvin Hidayat running Tapu Fini, Arcanine, Snorlax, Mimikyu, Tapu Bulu, and Metagross. So, okay, all right. It looks like it's going to be one of those teams that kind of tries to protect their Snorlax.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the matchups that jumped out to me immediately, granted because I love Metagross as a Pokemon, is just the juxtaposition of the Mudsdale on Arsal's team versus the Metagross on Alvin's team. Mudsdale, a very, very slow Pokemon, has that stamina ability that will boost its defense by 1 stage every time it gets hit by an attack. Metagross, being a Pokemon that is very weak to ground-type moves, might not be a great opportunity for Alvin to bring it in this match, but also might not be a great opportunity for Alvin to bring Trick Room as well. Mudsdale, known to be very slow, a lot of times run with items such as Assault Vest to boost its already high defenses, maybe one of those pinch berries to allow it to heal up after taking a significant amount of damage and getting those defense boosts. Just overall, a really great Pokemon, especially if you're even considering running a partial Trick Room team like Arsal has.
And he definitely used that Mudsdale to great effect against Gavin's team last night, right before in the last round of Swiss yesterday. And there it is in team preview, of course. We've already read off the teams. One thing to note, of course, Alvin Hidayat's team actually looks very similar to Rajan Ball's team, which we saw on stream yesterday on the main stage. So we have mentioned in the past that Alvin and Rajan are very close. They're very, they form a kind of like a trio of team builders between him, by him I mean Alvin, Rajan, and of course Nick Navarre. So maybe this is actually a similar team where you protect the Snorlax with as many options as you possibly can.
Yeah, and we've actually heard a little bit about that from other people as well. Colin Heyer and Conan Thompson running very similar teams. I know Marcus was practicing with the other players from Germany present in the tournament. It's really great when you get to day 2 of Swiss here in a situation like that, because if you've trained with your friends and, maybe one of your friends just had the right matchups and when it was able to progress onwards, you can sort of cheer them on and sort of, feel like, yeah, I helped that person accomplish that.
Yeah, and also, that's a lot more information for you and the rest of your friends to have, right?
Yeah, definitely.
You see how other players play, you see how other players have their teams. You kind of get together and you kind of confer with each other. Well, how did this matchup go for you? How did, what did you find were the faults in the team? And then maybe from there, you guys can kind of theory out exactly, how you can deal with those faults if that happens to come up again in the tournament.
Well, we'll have to see if Arsal and Alvin put in some time to prepare for this game. Both trainers were on stream yesterday, which means they could have gone back, maybe taken a peek, had their friends take some notes, figure out what would be the best play for this matchup.
And we are ready now to get started here with Alvin sending out Snorlax and Arcanine. Arsal going to go ahead and lead with Kartana and Tapu Koko here in Swiss Round 2. Well, technically it's Swiss Round 12, but it is also considered Swiss Round 3 of Day 2. So more intense Pokemon action as Arcanine using Intimidate here. Going to go ahead and lower the attack stat of the Kartana over on Arsal's side.
A very strong lead by Alvin here. Arcanine's Intimidate will lower Kartana's attack and also threaten the Kartana with any fire-type moves that it might be bringing. That Snorlax not very threatened at all because of that. So Snorlax may be free to use something like a Belly Drum, like a Curse, maybe try and boost its attack a couple stages. Tapu Koko, it can do some damage. It does benefit from the electric terrain and probably can attack that Arcanine for maybe about half its health. But overall, Arsal, I think, really needs to figure out how to get his Kartana out of this situation and maybe have it come back once that Arcanine's been taken off the field so it can be a little bit more effective overall. But fortunately for Alvin, that means, again, that Snorlax is free to start setting up. And as we've seen, throughout the day yesterday, that's just something that's really dangerous. Or you could just get rid of the electric terrain.
Tapu Bulu switching in for the Snorlax right here. Going to protect that Snorlax just for maybe later on in the game here as Tapu Koko using Volt Switch. Going to hit that Tapu Bulu, which was that Snorlax, going to probably try to pick up a quick KO, but Alvin is, well, he's protecting his Snorlax, which is really the name of the game of the team if this is similar to Rajan's team. Arsal deciding he's going to go ahead and switch in the Arcanine here, going to lower the attack stat of Arcanine on Alvin's side, as well as that Tapu Bulu. That Intimidate is going to pay huge dividends for Arsal because, well, Tapu Bulu, even though it is boosted by the grassy terrain, it won't be hitting quite as hard.
Oh.
Kartana using this turn to set up a substitute, so that's a very cool tech move right here as Arcanine on Alvin's side using this turn here to go for a Flare Blitz into the... Ooh, okay, the Arcanine thought instead of the Kartana, so Kartana getting up a free substitute here.
Yeah, that's a great play by Arsal. You know, having that substitute on Kartana means he doesn't have to be as worried about Pokemon like Arcanine staring down the Kartana on the other side of the field, but then using that substitute on a turn where a Kartana switch out seems very likely. Further, it just allows it to stick around at least for one more turn. Alvin would have to double into that Kartana with both a Flare Blitz or maybe a Wood Hammer or something from that Tapu Bulu to possibly have a chance to knock it out. And in the meantime, Kartana can also benefit from this grassy terrain. You know, moves like Leaf Blade love being around in grassy terrain. Or we could just keep the substitute around for another turn.
Yeah, even though Kartana does have the boost from the grassy terrain and is hiding behind a substitute, Tapu Bulu and Arcanine can wall it pretty well. Tapu Bulu now using this turn to set up a substitute as Arcanine over on Alvin's side, using Flare Blitz here. Gonna go into the Detect as Arcanine on Arsal's side now. Gonna go ahead and go for a Flare Blitz on that Tapu Bulu. Gonna go ahead and break that substitute, and that is actually a very fast Tapu Bulu because that outsped both the Arcanines on the other side.
That's really interesting. Tapu Bulu is not usually a Pokemon that you see as a fast Pokemon, instead being opted to train more defensively. You know, grassy terrain, I think, sort of helps out with the defenses as well, so maybe Alvin felt a little bit safer in investing in speed instead, but not getting that substitute to stick, not the end of the world for Alvin. I think the important thing was that Tapu Bulu was able to survive that turn, which it did, slowly whittle down Arcanine's health with the help of that recoil damage, but Alvin, you know, he's still in the position that he was last turn. He has to worry about keeping the Tapu Bulu around, he has to worry about the Arcanine, and just Arsal has all these opportunities to start attacking.
Tapu Bulu protects on Alvin's side as Kartana using Sacred Sword here, gonna hit that Arcanine over on Alvin's side. Alvin's side now using Flare Blitz yet again, gonna hit that Kartana and finally make that substitute fade away. Alvin's Arcanine's been moving before Arsal's Arcanine most of the time, so it might be safe to say that Alvin's Arcanine might be trained slightly faster, although it could still be a speed tie that Alvin's winning every single time. Arsal now using Flare Blitz in that Tapu Bulu Protect, just trying to keep that Tapu Bulu out on the field as long as possible, not willing to sacrifice it just yet.
But the longer that Tapu Bulu sticks around, the more health that Kartana is able to heal thanks to the grassy terrain. You know, Alvin, I think it's understandable why he made that switch, you know, not wanting to keep Snorlax in the line of fire for long, but Arsal's really been able to capitalize on that. You know, after one more turn of this grassy terrain healing Kartana's health, he will have basically gotten that substitute for free. And while he didn't deal that much damage throughout the duration of the substitute, you know, that's still chip damage, and every little bit counts.
Snorlax switching in right here, maybe expecting that Kartana to switch out in this position as well, but instead Alvin's Arcanine now using Flare Blitz, going to connect on that Kartana, going to fade that sub as the Arcanine on Arsal's side now is going to get to go ahead and move here. Most likely going to go for a Flare Blitz into that Snorlax slot as well. Now, Arcanine does go for that Flare Blitz, does go ahead and target down that Snorlax slot right there, which used to be that Tapu Bulu, doing a lot of damage, not quite activating the berry just yet, but, you know, Kartana's in not that bad a position right here. Could possibly go for a Leaf Blade, and a double up might be able to do a lot of damage to that Snorlax. Might be close to pick up the KO though.
It might be close, but if Snorlax is holding one of those pinch berries, it's going to be that much harder. At this point, one more hit on that Snorlax from either of these Pokemon will bring it below that 50% mark, where its Gluttony ability allows it to consume the berry if it has one. I think that's a very safe assumption to make. I want to say at least all Snorlax have some sort of berry on them at this point in time in this metagame. So Arsal might not be ready to make a play like that. He might want to try and go for a little bit smaller damage so that next turn he has a better chance of knocking it out in one hit.
Kartana detecting itself as Arcanine on Alvin's side hits into that Protect on that Kartana side, and now Arcanine on Arsal's side going to go ahead and activate the berry here with that Flare Blitz. Of course, Snorlax loves eating those berries. It's a gluttonous Pokemon, healing back 50% of his health, and you know that's good recovery right there. Snorlax on Alvin's side using Return to seal the turn, and do a lot of damage to that Arcanine.
Yeah, I think these two trainers are still sort of feeling each other out to see how the flow of this battle is going to work. You know, lots of chip damage, not a lot of big hits yet, not a lot of predictions as well. It feels like they're just, you know, sort of trading blows, trying to see, okay, well, who's going to make the big play first? Who's going to risk it first? Now that grassy terrain is gone, I think it might be a little more likely that we'll see a switch possibly from Arsal at this point. You know, his Arcanine's lower in health. I think the Intimidate, saving it for later, would help him if that Snorlax decides to set up. And Kartana, you know, it can detect this turn, not take any damage from that Arcanine, or it can attack, which is what we see it go for.
Kartana using Sacred Sword here, going to bring Snorlax down to a little under 50%. Arcanine on Alvin's side, going for the Flare Blitz here, going to finally pick up the KO on that Kartana. Going to pick up that KO easily because of Kartana's, well, aversion to fire, I guess, because it's
paper-thin defenses.
Paper-thin defenses. Arcanine on Arsal's side now using Flare Blitz here, going to connect onto Arcanine. Is it enough to pick up the KO? No, Snorlax barely hangs on. Can have this turn to use Recycle to heal all the way back up, and Kartana's attacks would go in vain.
Yeah, and losing the Kartana here, it's really hard to say whether or not that's a disadvantage from Arsal. From what we've seen so far, I don't think that Kartana was really relevant to the matchup. You know, it does have Sacred Sword to help with the Snorlax. It could deal some nice damage with the combination of the Leaf Blade and the Grassy Terrain that Alvin's brought with the Tapu Bulu, but otherwise, that's it. So bringing Tapu Koko back in will allow Arsal, I think, to take a much more offensive position on the field overall, you know, with the help of the Electric Terrain, with the help of the fact that Tapu Koko is just known to be one of those Pokemon that is very great at making special attacks that literally electrify the field. But I don't know. It's a really interesting spot. I think that Arsal is in a spot now where he has to make a big play this turn in order to get the momentum in his favor. Otherwise, Alvin can just continue to chip away at the Pokemon on Arsal's side of the field.
Arcanine switching out here, going to go into Tapu Fini. Not exactly a Pokemon that you usually see countering the Tapu Koko coming in, but it does change the terrain. And it looks like Tapu Koko going to use his turn to Volt Switch out. Just going to hit that Snorlax for a little bit of damage right there. It might be in range right now to get KO'd by a Flare Blitz, but again, it's going to be close. Arsal using this Volt Switch here to kind of change up the momentum, save that terrain for just a little bit later as Arsal switches in Mudsdale here. Mudsdale yesterday had a very bad matchup with that Tapu Fini, so Mudsdale, again, not going to have a great matchup with that Tapu Fini. And, ooh, it looks like the Flare Blitz hits into that Tapu Fini right there, maybe expecting a Tapu Bulu to come in right there.
I don't think Mudsdale was the play for this matchup. You know, it will get the defense boost here thanks to the return connecting with it and dealing some damage, but, you know, we've now seen all four of Arsal's Pokemon, we've seen all four of Alvin's Pokemon, and just on paper, there's still the Tapu Bulu in the back of Alvin's party. There's Tapu Fini out on the field. Those are two Pokemon that really Mudsdale's not a big fan of. And wow, that is an interesting tech.
Tapu Fini using Heal Pulse here again. The name of the game on Alvin's team is heal that Snorlax, protect that Snorlax. Arcanine using Snarl. Not going to do much damage, but it is going to get a special attack drop on that Tapu Fini. Not going to matter too much for that Snorlax. Snorlax using this turn to Recycle, and again, this Snorlax just wants to stay out on the field. Has not used any setup moves at all. Mudsdale using this turn to go for a high horsepower, hitting in that Tapu Fini slot. Doing good damage right there. Most importantly, if it's carrying a berry, it did not activate it. It's going to be close, though.
Yeah, it looks to be pretty close. I don't think we can make the assumption that it doesn't have one of those berries yet because, I mean, just guessing, that looks like it's more 30% than 25%, which is what the berries usually will activate at. But still, not much has changed. Mudsdale could still be at the receiving end of a Muddy Water this turn, now that Snorlax has the recycled berry and has the Heal Pulse. But Tapu Fini happy to stick around because it knows that it's one of the win conditions, I think, for Alvin.
Arcanine and Tapu Fini exchange protects there. Snorlax using Stockpile, so now it is time for Snorlax to set up. Snorlax going to go ahead and boost its attack and its special defense and physical defense by one stage each. Mudsdale revealing close combat, going to hit that Snorlax, going to go ahead and activate that berry, so Snorlax is going to heal back, and it's going to actually be at almost full health, more health than it started the turn with. Also, interesting thing to note of this turn is that Tapu Fini is going to be moving faster than that Snorlax for sure because it moved before, and now it protected before as well.
Wow, so That's just a really interesting team construction. You know, I'm like breaking down Alvin's team in my head, and he has the Tapu Bulu to support the Snorlax with the help of Grassy Terrain. He has Heal Pulse on the Tapu Fini. He has Stockpile on that Snorlax. You mentioned earlier that, you know, Rajan's team, the motive was basically keep Snorlax alive, and I can see that here as well. Alvin's whole strategy right now is to make sure that Snorlax is happy and healthy and able to keep consistently doing damage, and Arsal, I think, just really lacks the board positioning right now to threaten that.
Arcanine switching in here, going to go ahead and use its Intimidate ability to lower Arcanine's physical attack stat and Mudsdale's physical attack stat. So Arcanine on Arsal's side using Flare Blitz here. I believe it's going to go ahead and target down the Snorlax, but that Stockpile is paying huge dividends right now, boosting its defenses by just one stage, and Snorlax, again, content to just use Recycle.
Snorlax wants to stick around for the entirety of this game, and I think it will. This high horsepower connects with the Arcanine, which...
Got him!
Yeah, so that's one knockout for Arsal, but I don't think that was the Pokemon that he necessarily needed to knock out. I think this Mudsdale will need to lose that Intimidate if it wants to have a shot of knocking out the Snorlax with a close combat, but even then, with the Stockpile, it would have to be a critical hit. This Tapu Fini will still be faster than the Arcanine, and Mudsdale most likely be able to connect with some sort of water-type move, maybe a Muddy Water, maybe a Scald, get the knockout on either of these Pokemon. And while Tapu Koko in the back can certainly help out with Pokemon like that Tapu Fini, there's still the Snorlax and there's still the Tapu Bulu on Alvin's side of the field as well. Just really great field management by Alvin throughout this game.
Yeah, if you're Arsal, you have to preserve that Arcanine to have that good matchup against that Tapu Bulu still hiding in the back. Arsal using this turn to switch out, going to bring in Tapu Koko, going to change the terrains right here, going to try to operate in the terrain that he thinks is going to be best. Instead of that Misty Terrain, Tapu Fini not going to do anything at all here, just going to protect itself and not get KO'd. As Arcanine using this turn to go for another Flare Blitz here, going to hit that Snorlax. Of course, Snorlax now is actually pretty safe to set up even more if it really wants to. It's a burn!
Okay, Arsal needed that.
Yep.
Yeah, he really needed that. I mean, that doesn't help Snorlax's defenses from continuing to grow higher thanks to the Stockpile, but at least now Snorlax won't be as threatening from a damage-dealing aspect. Unfortunately, if Snorlax can just keep hanging around and slowly whittle away at Arsal's Pokemon's health, you know, it's mostly just a time saving, I guess, having that attack boost, but, you know, Burn will help with a little bit of damage. It'll help with just making sure that Arsal doesn't get knocked out as quickly. So I don't think it's game-changing, but it's certainly not bad.
You don't mind it if you're Arsal.
You don't mind it.
You don't mind it, but right now, the thing that's going to matter the most is Tapu Koko going to have enough offensive firepower to be able to pick up the KO on that Snorlax at some point. Tapu Koko using Volt Switch here, going to pick up the KO on Tapu Fini, which is going to be good board position for Arsal because Tapu Bulu is going to be forced to come in as Tapu Koko comes in later, so that means that Arsal's going to be operating in Electric Terrain for the rest of the game. Well, at least until Tapu Koko is forced to come back in. Mudsdale coming back in here, Arcanine using Flare Blitz again, going to go ahead and, well, it's going to hit Snorlax down to activate the Pinch Berry. Well, it's not really in a pinch. Snorlax is just so gluttonous that it enjoys eating it just a bit early.
I mean, the Snorlax likes its snacks, you know? I can't argue with that.
Doesn't like snacks.
I know, really. I could go for some snacks right now.
And here, Snorlax using Belly Drum here, going to go ahead and start setting up and maximizing its attack stat. That burn is going to help because, well, that burn's going to have the amount of physical damage, so Snorlax is not going to be picking up one-hit KOs everywhere. Some Pokemon may be able to survive here and there.
That's incredible, though. Stockpile and Belly Drum, you know, using Stockpile to sort of set up, get those defenses up before using Belly Drum, at which point really puts you in a precarious situation. Arsal's going to be forced, I think, to switch in the Tapu Koko for this turn to get rid of that Grassy Terrain. If I had to guess, the Arcanine probably will be the Pokemon that leaves the field, since I don't know if there's much Mudsdale can do overall, given the fact that it's threatened by the Tapu Bulu, and we saw that close combat deal such little damage earlier on in this game. But once the Grassy Terrain's gone, maybe if Tapu Koko can stick around, we still haven't seen any Z moves from either of these trainers. I think a Z move is Arsal's best bet right now to knock out that Snorlax, and then maybe have Arcanine come back out later to try and knock out the Tapu Bulu. Arcanine
protecting itself here, as it looks like Tapu Bulu is going to go for a Bloom Doom here.
Ooh.
In that Grassy Terrain, is going to be doing a massive amount of damage, could be targeting down this Mudsdale for an easy one-hit KO, even though Mudsdale has decently high physical defense, but at the same time, it's super effective. It's in grassy terrain. There's the same type of attack bonus. That's a lot right there.
That will be a lot,
Arcanine.
but Arcanine's definitely the bigger threat for Alvin right now. If Arcanine had switched out into the Tapu Koko, or if Arcanine just didn't protect, that could have been a knockout there that would have guaranteed Alvin the win. Now, Arcanine protecting and staying on the field was really the best option for it there, but now that Mudsdale is knocked out, we do have the benefit of Tapu Koko taking the field again, and I mean, Arcanine could still Flare Blitz something, but it's going to be really close. I think both these trainers have a shot at winning this game. I don't think it's really been decided in terms of who will, take the game one from here on out, but it's going to come down to, does Arsal have a Z move available to him, and how much the Flare Blitz will do to the Tapu Bulu.
Yeah, if Tapu Koko can maybe wreak havoc in this electric terrain, that could possibly be something. Of course, Snorlax has 2 special defense boosts, so Snorlax is going to be a bit bulkier. Of course, Tapu Bulu is also known for its physical bulk, so it may be able to also hang on from a Flare Blitz as well. So now it really comes down to, does Tapu Koko have something to be able to pick up the KO on that Snorlax? It's going to be so close, and this game 1 is coming down to the wire. Here we go. It looks like it's going to be the Gigavolt Havoc from that Tapu Koko, wreaking havoc in that electric terrain with that same type of attack bonus. Is it going to be enough to pick up the KO on that Snorlax with 2 special defense boosts?
I don't know, but if any move had the opportunity to do this, it would have been the Gigavolt Havoc, so I'm glad to see that Arsal did decide to bring it on his Tapu Koko. But again, those 2 special defense boosts, Snorlax just being so bulky already, it might be able to hang on.
It hangs on with just a sliver of health. Tapu Bulu using Wood Hammer here outside of its terrain, hitting Arcanine. Arcanine can't go 1 hit point. It hangs on with 1 hit point.
Oh, man.
And Arcanine using Flare Blitz here. Does it target down the Tapu Bulu or the Snorlax? Hits the Snorlax and picks up the KO, but now it's going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult for that Tapu Koko to be able to deal with that Tapu Bulu.
Yeah, so I think Arsal did the right thing there. If I had to guess, he probably had both the Arcanine and the Tapu Koko target down the Snorlax so that if the Gigavolt Havoc did somehow miss the knockout on the Snorlax, the Arcanine would be able to follow up. Unfortunately, though, Arcanine took so much damage from that Wood Hammer, the recoil damage from the Flare Blitz was enough to knock it out. And now with the Tapu Koko versus the Tapu Bulu, it's going to come down to how these Pokemon are trained and really how much this Wood Hammer does to the Tapu Koko.
Is this Wood Hammer going to be enough to KO the Tapu Koko? Tapu Koko hangs on, and Tapu Bulu knocks itself out with recoil. Arsal Puri coming back after that Snorlax was pretty well set up. Barely hangs on with just 33 hit points to take game 1 here of Swiss Round 12, and that was just an exciting game 1. That was only game 1.
That was only game 1, and it was so close. I think if the grassy terrain were still up and that Tapu Bulu had used Wood Hammer to target down that Tapu Koko, that would have been a knockout. So it just goes to show you how Arsal's played to remove the Tapu Koko from the field, knowing that the grassy terrain was going to come out so that he could remove it. Just really, that was the key play. I mean, he didn't have the most, I think, lucky rolls in terms of how much damage he was able to do, but because he was able to survive those hits, because he was able to manage the terrain, that allowed him to win out. Moving forwards into game 2, I'm not sure if he'll be able to keep that up. I think Alvin now realizes that he has to be super careful about how he plays that Tapu Fini, that Tapu Bulu. Maybe we'll see something like a Trick Room mode come out from Alvin, but given the fact that Arsal did bring that Mudsdale with him in game 1, I kind of doubt it. I think both these trainers will probably stick with a very similar strategy, just maybe play it a little bit differently.
Yeah, and one thing to note, of course, is, Alvin's Snorlax does move before the Mudsdale, so Mudsdale is a slower Pokemon, so that Mudsdale would be outspeeding it in Trick Room anyway, so still an intense match between these two.
Very intense.
Again, Arsal played it exceptionally well with how he had that board position, exactly how he played that terrain, just like you mentioned, so here we are getting ready to head into game 2 between Arsal Puri, who just barely squeaked in to day 2, versus Alvin Hidayat, who also barely just squeaked into day 2. Are also sending out Tapu Fini and Arcanine, as Snorlax and Arcanine are the leads for Alvin. So it looks like the Arcanine over on Alvin's side is going to go ahead and intimidate first. So again, could be a speed tie, or Alvin's is just straight up faster. Arcanine on Arsal's side now using its own Intimidate here, going to lower Snorlax's attack stat, but of course we've already seen it use Belly Drum, so it can easily just maximize its attack and mitigate that anyways, mitigate the Intimidate anyways.
So an interesting adjustment from Arsal. I know I said earlier that these trainers would probably bring the same 4 Pokemon, but I actually forgot about the Kartana that Arsal had at the beginning of that Game 1 because it got so exciting towards the end. Bringing that Tapu Fini as his lead allows him to threaten that Arcanine a bit earlier and also actually deal damage to that Arcanine. I think Kartana, I mean, it got a nice amount of chip damage down. It got a couple substitutes, was able to hang around, but really I think Tapu Fini will just be a better Pokemon to have in this role.
Right now, it definitely does a lot more, exerts a lot more pressure on the Arcanine, forcing it to switch out here. As Tapu Bulu comes in, going to try to replace the terrain with its grassy terrain, also slowly heal back that Snorlax if it ever does get some chip damage done to it. Arcanine also switching out on Arsal's side here. It's going to be a revolving door of Pokemon as Tapu Koko comes right back in. Going to change that terrain up yet again. So now, well, it's a field of many terrains, right?
It's a revolving door of terrains? Does that work?
Revolving field?
Revolving field?
I don't know. Tapu Fini now switches in as well for, oh my gosh. We've seen 3 different terrain. Oh, there's 4 Tapu Pokemon out on the field. Tapu Fini using this turn to go for a Scald here. Going to hit the Tapu Fini over on Alvin's side. So not very effective damage. The advantage in that turn really just, I mean, it was just lots of switching.
Lots of switching, and goes to show you that both Arsal and Alvin have recognized the fact that terrain is the name of the game. You know, all we need is a Tapu Lele out on the field, and then we'd have all 4 of the Alolan Guardian Pokemon out, ready to battle. But in this case, I think Tapu Fini on both these trainers' side of the field is probably a better play than Lele for their teams overall. Tapu Fini on Arsal's side of the field probably won't stick around that long. That Tapu Bulu will threaten it even without the presence of the grassy terrain, and I think Arsal needs to preserve one of his Alolan Guardians so that he can continue to control the terrain moving forwards.
Tapu Fini now switching out, and how fitting it is that the Pokemon on the side of your screen is actually that Tapu Fini as well. Arcanine switching in here, going to use its Intimidate ability to lower the attack stat of that Tapu Bulu over on Alvin's side. Tapu Fini using Protect here as Arsal nodding his head. Could be good, could be bad. It looks like it's going to be a Gigavolt Havoc coming out right here. Most likely going to target down that Tapu Fini, which will not be able to fully protect itself, but it's still some chip damage.
I don't know, though. Knowing that Alvin has the Snorlax in the back of his party and knowing that Gigavolt Havoc was really the win condition for Arsal in Game 1, I don't think he wants to be using that Z move quite yet, especially since Tapu Fini did protect itself. It's not going to take nearly as much damage as it would have if it didn't protect. And it's just giving Tapu Bulu the free substitute as well. I don't think that was the most optimal use of a Z move for Arsal.
Yeah, so now Tapu Bulu hiding behind a substitute. That's good position for Alvin. Of course, Woodhammer won't do that much to Arcanine, but it can threaten Tapu Koko slot.
It can. We did see that Woodhammer almost knock out the Tapu Koko last game. If Tapu Fini had some sort of spread move, again, like that Muddy Water, that would ensure the knockout. But Tapu Fini content to stick around for a bit longer.
Snorlax switching in for that Tapu Fini. Tapu Fini does not want to take a possible Volt Switch or a Thunderbolt here. Arcanine using Extreme Speed, going to hit into that Tapu Fini slot, doing a little bit of chip damage to that Snorlax, as Arsal stays in and actually goes for a Thunderbolt, bringing Snorlax down to about 60%, maybe about 65% right there. Not quite in range to eat that berry.
No, not quite in range to eat that berry, and nothing on Arsal's side of the field in range to potentially knock it out before it can eat that berry. So Alvin, again, in one of these positions where his Snorlax is relatively unthreatened, most likely we're going to see him go for that stockpile again, boosting his defenses before using that belly drum. It's such a great way to run Snorlax. Like I said earlier, belly drum is one of those moves that really puts you in a tough spot because you just don't have the defenses to keep up with all the recycles you need to keep your health up. But with the addition of something like stockpile, yes, you can't run a move like high horsepower that threatens the Arcanine a bit more, but when you're at +6 attack, you know, any move's going to knock out any of the Pokemon on the field.
Arcanine on Arsal's side now switching out, not going to want to stay in as Kartana switches in here. Kartana can deal with that Snorlax a bit better, and it doesn't mind where it is on the field right now. Tapu Koko using Volt Switch here, activating Snorlax's berry here as it munches away on its berry and healing back 50% with that Ayapapa berry. Tapu Koko is switching back out, can use his turn to switch back in the Arcanine to drop yet another Intimidate onto that Snorlax, but Arsal's down on the field and he does actually drop in the Arcanine.
That's an interesting play. I think it's more interesting to me that Arsal did decide to bring that Kartana. It turns out that Tapu Fini was an adjustment for the Mudsdale. Yeah, that such an interesting play going on with that second substitute from the Tapu Bulu with the stockpile from the Snorlax. If I had to guess, Alvin was expecting to be at the receiving end of a Flare Blitz that turn, didn't quite get it. So overall, safe switching for Arsal, but that Kartana, not sure if it's the right Pokemon for this matchup.
I think it might actually be a good Pokemon in this matchup. It has a fairly good matchup against the Snorlax and the Tapu Bulu right now. Ooh, Tapu Bulu revealing a secret move right there. Kind of a naughty move right there because it's a hidden power that's going to hit that substitute for super effective damage. I can only assume that it's going to be the hidden power fire trying to catch some Kartanas by surprise. Arcanine using Flare Blitz here, going to connect onto that Tapu Bulu. Going to go ahead and fade that substitute away. One of the great things about Kartana is that it has access to Sacred Sword. Snorlax can continue to stockpile, but Sacred Sword will just bypass those defenses anyway.
It will bypass the defenses, but it will not bypass the recycling and reconsumption of its berry. And that's, I think, the bigger threat for Arsal right now. You know, we saw Kartana use that Sacred Sword on the Snorlax back in Game 1. It did maybe about 25, less than that, percent damage to that Snorlax health. And that's just a lot of turns that you have to keep, you know, attacking this Snorlax. And now that we know that this Tapu Bulu has hidden power fire, there's still the Arcanine in the back of Alvin's party. There are so many threats for that Kartana right now, and even if it had a Focus Sash, it can't even use it anymore.
Arcanine switching in for the Tapu Bulu. Tapu Bulu not going to try to go for a hidden power fire. Wants to preserve that Tapu Bulu for just a little bit later and also get usage out of this Intimidate. Kartana detecting itself here, not going to want to get hit by a surprise hidden power fire as well. Arsal's Arcanine using Flare Blitz here. It is intimidating now. Going to go ahead and hit the Arcanine over on Alvin's side, doing a little bit of chip damage, and now the Snorlax again free to set up yet another move here. Going to go for another stockpile. So I think one of the keys to the game right now is Arsal going to be preserving the Kartana for just a little bit later so he can come in and going for some Sacred Swords on that Snorlax. Otherwise, that Snorlax is just going to be too much of a wall.
I don't know. I think Arsal has to, if he wants to have a shot at winning this, probably switching out the Kartana, sending in that Tapu Fini maybe. But it's such a good... Snorlax is such a good Pokemon. Every time you make those switches, you do it at the cost of taking damage. And it's a trade. I don't think it's a trade that Arsal can afford, but at the same time, he doesn't really have the tools he needs to keep doing damage.
Arcanine using Flare Blitz here, going to go ahead and fade that substitute that Kartana used this turn, set it up this turn. So Arcanine continuing to take continuous recoil damage as Arcanine on Arsal's side also goes for yet another Flare Blitz here. Gonna hit that Snorlax. It could possibly draw for another burn, but no. Those stockpiles paying off huge dividends, and here is stockpile number 3 for Snorlax. So Snorlax can no longer boost its defenses.
So this was one more stockpile than we saw last game. I was actually expecting the Belly Drum this turn, I think, from that Snorlax based off what we saw last turn, but hey, you know, if you're already a bulky Pokemon, why not just take those defenses to the max? Snorlax, again, still not threatened by the Pokemon on Arsal's side of the field. Maybe if Arsal's able to switch it up here, he can change things around, but he really has to start working on his momentum.
Tapu Fini switching in here. Of course, going to go ahead and bring back the Misty Terrain as Arcanine on Alvin's side again. Going first, going to go for a Flare Blitz, going to hit into that Tapu Fini slot. Good switch right there from Arsal, and now Arsal either has to rely on the Kartana in the back or a critical hit to bypass those defenses on that Snorlax. Arsal's Arcanine now going for yet another Flare Blitz into that Snorlax. Not a critical hit, not much damage dealt at all, and now Snorlax using Return, not even using this turn to set up a Belly Drum, just going to go for raw damage here on this Arcanine, bring it down to about a little over 50%.
Yeah, and Snorlax doesn't have to worry about setting the Belly Drum up. You know, it's completely not threatened right now. I think the best thing that Tapu Fini could do is that if this Tapu Fini has, you know, Scald, it could Arsal could try and Flare Blitz and Scald the Snorlax, maybe get a burn, but even that can't happen because of the Misty Terrain. So there's like so many options that Arsal sort of has taken away from himself in this matchup.
Alvin now switching out the Arcanine. Again, this is a very intense game with all the switching, trying to find that perfect board position. Arcanine switching out, going to go back into Tapu Koko, which is a great matchup against that new Tapu Fini that has just hit the field there. Now Tapu Fini is going to get to move using Haze here, revealing Haze. Going to go ahead and drop, well, pretty much reset all stats. So now Snorlax is down to, well, 0 boost at all, and of course now it can't stockpile at all. So that return hitting that Tapu Fini. So what a great time to reveal Haze when Snorlax can't boost its defenses anymore.
Yeah, so, but now Arsal has to keep the Tapu Fini around on the off chance that the Snorlax decides to go for a belly drum. We've already seen Arsal use his Z move for this game, so we know that he can't use it to possibly knock out the Snorlax given its current health. Maybe Snorlax could try and recycle or something. I think it still has that berry, so probably not as worried about that. Just there's still so much up in the air. I think this turn will decide the flow of the rest of the game.
Tapu Bulu switching in here, replacing that Tapu Fini, preserving that Tapu Fini for a bit later. It does have access to that Heal Pulse, which is such a vital part of Alvin's team. Arsal switching out his own Tapu Fini, going to go into Arcanine. Great call right there, because that Intimidate is going to drop the attack stat of Snorlax and Tapu Bulu. Going to go ahead and make them do less damage. Tapu Koko using Thunderbolt here, hitting into what was that Tapu Fini, doing decent amount of damage to that Tapu Bulu, and Snorlax using Return. Going to go ahead and target down that Tapu Koko, but again, without that Belly Drum, not doing that much damage.
Yeah, I think this is probably the best board position that Arsal has had all game. Flare Blitz into the Tapu Bulu right here. It's going to be close, but most likely a knockout if we don't see an Intimidate switch from Alvin's side of the field, which I think is going to be a given for him at this point. The Tapu Bulu, we know Tapu Koko has taken chip damage. If it can connect a Wood Hammer with that Tapu Koko, it will be able to knock it out. Snorlax not going to accomplish much. It can't stockpile anymore. It probably won't want to Belly Drum, so switch out the Snorlax, get the Arcanine on the field, intimidate the Arcanine on Arsal's side of the field, and then hope that your Tapu Bulu is able to connect the Wood Hammer with the Tapu Koko. And even if Arsal does switch out to one of his other Pokemon in the back, that Tapu Fini or that Kartana, still likely to guarantee a knockout.
Yeah, no knockouts have been taken at all.
I know.
It's turn 11 of this game.
It's a lot of trading back and forth, and it's interesting that both these players have such defensive play style, and no one's really trying to make those big plays. I don't know if that's a good thing or not. It's certainly making for an interesting match to commentate, that's for sure.
Yeah, and of course, Arsal respecting that Protect right there, giving the head nod towards that Tapu Bulu, of course, you know, wanting to double up into it just to cover all the bases if it was a Tapu Fini switch in, or if, you know, Tapu Bulu stayed in, for sure, that'd be a KO. So Snorlax does get a return off onto that Snorlax, or onto the Arcanine, and doing a lot of damage, almost picking up the KO there.
Yeah, but thanks to the grassy terrain, I think it will just fall short this turn. Now, if Arcanine's able to connect a Flare Blitz with something, that won't be the case because of the recoil damage, but Arcanine still has, I believe, that Mago Berry we saw in the past game as well. So Arcanine going to stick around. Arsal really in a great position here to start making big plays. That last turn wasn't really, I think, the read that he had to make there. I think that ignoring Snorlax is still a bit dangerous, knowing that the Belly Drum could allow for at least one turn if we don't see the Tapu Fini take the field now. Tapu
Koko using Volt Switch here, hitting that Tapu Bulu, and now Arsal gets to continue to switch Pokemon because it seems like it's what both players enjoy doing very much. Of course, if Arcanine hits that Tapu Bulu with a Flare Blitz, it should bring it down to range to activate that Mago Berry that you mentioned earlier. Tapu Fini comes in, gonna go ahead and change the terrain yet again. Remember, your keys to the gaming, terrain control is important. Tapu Bulu, though, using this turn to set up a substitute here. Gonna try to preserve it for just one more turn as Arcanine on Arsal's side going for a Flare Blitz here. Gonna hit that Tapu Bulu, gonna make that substitute fade. And now it's a question of whether that's enough recoil to activate that Mago Berry. And it's gonna be pretty close here as Arcanine continues to get chipped away, but no, not at all, as Snorlax now gets to go for a return into the Tapu Fini. Okay, well, Arcanine's still on the field.
Yeah, Arcanine's still on the field. I gotta give credit to both these trainers. Playing defensively like this, making these switches, these reads, turn after turn after turn, is probably one of the most difficult play styles to keep up in Pokemon. You have to keep thinking about, well, what will my opponent be thinking? What will my opponent be thinking that I'll be thinking? And as you can see here, I think that they're making some really interesting predictions. They're not quite working out, I think, the way that either of these trainers want them to. But as the turn count increases, the timer decreases, and we're getting to the point where there's been enough chip damage thrown around that I think it's time for these big plays. Like, if it's not this turn, it'll be the next turn. Or maybe one more turn after that.
That Moonblast did a lot of damage as Snorlax trying to use Stockpile, but it fails. Yeah, you cannot use more than 3 stockpiles while that Snorlax is out, even if your defense stats have dropped right there. So it's kind of a different move than most setup moves in the fact that you can only use it 3 times, even if your attack stats drop.
And that's one of those things that if you don't happen to find a Haze Tapu Fini or a Haze Pokemon in practice, you might not realize is a mechanic in the game. So for Alvin, I think that was a tough lesson. I don't think it's one that he's going to forget, especially if we do get a Game 3 here. But, you know, looking at the Pokemon on the field, Tapu Fini will probably be knocked out by 1 hit by something. Arcanine probably could be knocked out by 1 hit by something. Alvin is in the spot where if he can make a big play, he might be able to scrape some momentum in his favor. And this looks like to be it. Wow! What a great read by Alvin. Finally able to, you know, make a right call with that Hidden Power Fire into that Kartana switch, trading, I think, the Tapu Bulu for the Kartana. Not sure how that's going to work out for him, but wow, that was a really great read.
Snorlax using Recycle here. What a great call right there from Alvin. Of course, Arsal did get that Tapu Bulu in return, but you know, that is still something, you know, when you lose a hard-hitting Pokemon like Kartana, that's still, I take that. You take those.
Yeah, but you know, we sort of talked about this in Game 1. I'm not sure how much the Kartana would be of use. I mean, Sacred Sword, it does ignore the stockpiles, but the stockpiles are gone. So I don't think that was a big loss for Arsal. I think it's great for Alvin. I mean, that's one less thing he has to think about when he's going down his mental checklist of, will my opponent do this? Will my opponent do this? But, you know, he still had the Arcanine that definitely threatens the Kartana. The Snorlax probably would have been able to knock out the Kartana given its current HP. I don't think it was as big of a win as Alvin really needed that turn. Still great though, like still a great prediction.
Yeah, and Arcanine coming in here, gonna go yet for another Intimidate, of course. Tapu Fini might be in range of getting KO'd by even a Flare Blitz or even an Extreme Speed if Alvin's carries Extreme Speed. Tapu Koko on Arsal's side protecting itself here as Arcanine using Flare Blitz going to hit into that Tapu Fini slot here. It should be pretty close to the KO. It should be the KO, and Tapu Fini does get KO'd. Snorlax now has a chance to possibly go for a setup or even maybe just going for an attack. Yep, just go straight for a return.
Yeah, but okay, knocking out the Tapu Fini, that was really great for Alvin. I think maybe the Hidden Power Fire prediction was sort of a like mental stamina booster for him. That was a really great read. You know, he was able to prioritize that. I want to be able to knock out something. You know, that Tapu Fini maybe won't get knocked out by the Extreme Speed, but I think that the Tapu Koko will probably be the Pokemon that my opponent wants to protect the most. And now that it's down to just this Arcanine and this Tapu Koko, and Arsal doesn't have that Z move, that Snorlax is still on the field. It's still at practically full health. It still has its berry. Arsal needs to figure out a way to address that.
Will Arsal be able to activate it?
I don't know. I mean, it's going to be close. This Thunderbolt will be boosted by the electric terrain, and it just barely does enough damage.
Well, to activate the berry.
To activate the berry.
Is Arcanine going to be able to... Ooh, Bulldoze. Okay, that's going to hit Tapu Koko and Arcanine. Going to lower their speeds by 1 stage, which is going to be important because now that Tapu Koko might be underspeeding the Arcanine over on the other side here. Depends on how all the Pokemon on the field are trained, but it does activate Arsal's berry here. Going to be the Mago Bear, I believe, on the Arcanine here. Going to heal back up as Arcanine using Flare Blitz here from Arsal's side. Going to go ahead and target down the Snorlax. Doing good, decent damage, bringing it down to about a little over 50% right there. As Snorlax, again, content to use Recycle.
Arsal keeps targeting down the Snorlax on turns when it's just happy to keep healing. It's a really sort of interesting position to be in. Do you keep attacking the Snorlax, which is happy to keep healing, happy to keep sort of the threat of damage on the field, or do you attack the Pokemon that's actually going to start, you know, dealing some damage?
Arcanine using Extreme Speed, but Arcanine now is going to be outspeeding the Tapu Koko. So the Bulldoze does go off yet again. So now this Tapu Koko may be underspeeding the Tapu Fini that is hiding behind in back. And it is also going to proc the berry on Snorlax as well as Snorlax eats yet another Ayapapa berry. Tapu Koko finally going for a Thunderbolt here. Going to go ahead and pick up the KO on the Arcanine, and it is enough to pick up the KO. So, oh boy, all right. All right, now Tapu Fini is going to come back in. Snorlax, again, content on just using Recycle. So Snorlax now setting up for the end game. Both Pokemon on Arsal's side are extremely slow. They've had their speed stats drop twice, so that's going to be essentially halved as Tapu Fini comes in at fairly decent health.
This is where things get very interesting, and I don't think that Arsal's lost this quite yet. I think that he still has a little bit of momentum on his side, provided he wants to play it out, but who knows, he might have just clicked in a forfeit there. If Tapu Fini were to be able to knock out the Tapu Koko, or if maybe Tapu Fini protected while Arsal did target the Tapu Fini, it might have not been a favorable outcome for him. I'm not really sure how I feel about the forfeit there. I think that he still had a shot depending on predictions, but I mean, that was about, 15, 16, 17 turns of a very, very mentally intense Pokemon game. You have to start worrying about stamina when it comes into this point in a Game 3 in such an important game like this, and not the Mudsdale ability stamina, your actual mental thinking stamina. It's a limited resource in these games. You have so much that you have to keep juggling, especially when you're playing these terrain wars, or you're playing these very defensive switching mind games. If you're able to preserve just an ounce of that stamina for Game 3, and so you can maybe make the play in that game that'll win you the series, rather than try and make a play when it's, maybe 9 times out of 10 not going to fall in your favor, that could be game deciding. So I can understand why he clicked in the forfeit there. I think he still had a shot to win that, but I don't think it was worth the risk of just having to play out that game for a few more turns.
Well, it was also up to timer.
It was also up for timer.
Timer is currently running pretty low. We are under 10 minutes now, so it is cutting it pretty close. Arsal probably could have used maybe one more turn at the most to try to figure out what that Tapu Fini's plan exactly was. I don't think we've seen an attacking move from it yet. We've only seen the Heal Pulse. We've seen the protecting and the switching from that Tapu Fini, so that could be vital information going into Game 3 that Arsal kind of forfeited when he clicked the forfeit button. So now Game 3 here of Swiss Round 12. Intense match. Both players are 9-2, and time is running low, so it's most likely going to come down to a timer call here.
Or one of these trainers could just decide that they want to go on the offensive in this game. Given the fact that we've had slow starts to both Game 1 and Game 2, we could see something here where both trainers are thinking, well, my opponent's most likely to go for a slow start to Game 3. Maybe I should just charge forward and go for it. And sometimes in that situation, you end up in the exact opposite of the games you've had in the past, where you'll see 1 or 2 knockouts immediately within the first turn. With the current leads, probably not going to happen.
And here we go, Game 3 with just a little over 5 minutes left. Arcanine and Porygon 2 leads for Arsal. On the other side, Snorlax and Arcanine leads for Alvin. So, kind of changing up for Arsal's side. He's going to bring that Porygon 2 here. Going to maybe opt for a more Trick Room-like mode.
I don't know what this Porygon 2 is going to do. I would assume that given the current playstyle of Arsal, maybe it has Toxic, and he's hoping to sort of punish Alvin for the fact that the last game went on for so long. Maybe allow that Snorlax, or not allow that Snorlax to keep itself as healthy as it did in the past. I don't think Trick Room is the right adjustment here. Snorlax loves Trick Room, and Alvin's Arcanine could even lower its speed further to underspeed that Mudsdale thanks to Bulldoze.
One thing that Porygon 2 does have access to is going to be that recover option, which may come down to, if it comes down to timer, well, Porygon 2's on the field, I'm just going to have to hit recover. So this is really going to come down to a game of picking up as many KOs as possible, as fast as possible. Snorlax going right off the bat, using Belly Jump here. Alvin now hitting that hyper offensive mode. Of course, that Tapu Fini over on the other side of the field does also have access to the Heal Pulse. Can use Heal Pulse on that Snorlax if it needs to. Porygon 2 using Trick Room right here, and of course Mudsdale has already revealed close combat, so it can be doing a lot of damage, especially when Snorlax doesn't have access to its berry.
It can be doing a lot of damage, but Mudsdale also at risk of getting knocked out by that Snorlax. We haven't seen Arsal's Tapu Fini on the field yet, so we don't know if he has even brought that Haze option to counteract the Belly Drum, and even if he did, now that Trick Room's up, the Tapu Fini wouldn't be able to use it before the Snorlax could attack. So Snorlax, an indication that Alvin is going to try and play that hyper offense in this Game 3, maybe eke out a Pokemon advantage before the timer hits 0. The Pokemon advantage being the first of 3 sort of levels of tiebreakers you go through.
Close combat from that Mudsdale, hitting that Snorlax, doing about 60% damage right there. Gonna drop its defenses, and now Snorlax could probably pick up an easy KO. Snorlax using return, gonna go ahead and target down that Mudsdale. That should be the clean one-hit KO. And now Tapu Fini does have access to Heal Pulse, can easily just heal it right back up. And it looks like Porygon 2 is gonna have to set up a Trick Room to reverse it now, because he kind of realized, well, I guess my Snorlax is, or I guess the Mudsdale's gonna get KO'd, so.
Yep, and that was really the only way that turn could have played out, unfortunately, for Arsal. You know, a great job by Alvin getting that belly drum up, turn 1, adding the Tapu Fini to the field, knowing that there was no way that Mudsdale could knock out the Snorlax in one hit. Kartana, though, not going to be able to stop the belly drum. Maybe could knock out Tapu Fini, but again, you have to keep an eye on the Pokemon count right here. As the timer ticks down, that's really the most important thing to manage.
Yeah, Kartana does have access to Sacred Sword, but haven't seen an item on it yet. Could be a Fightinium Z, Grassium Z. That's usually what people run with Substitute.
Yeah, definitely.
So if it is a Fightinium Z, that could be something that could deal with that Snorlax, but I feel like if he had it, he would have used it a very, very long time ago in games 1 and 2. Tapu Fini now withdrawing itself, gonna switch into Arcanine to use the Intimidate, gonna try to mitigate damage, and of course now Alvin realized that he has the Pokemon lead. I just need to maintain this Pokemon lead. Gonna go ahead and drop the attack set on that Kartana, and it looks like Kartana's gonna go ahead and activate a Z move here. It's gonna be the Bloom Doom here. Most likely, well, it would have been a KO on that Tapu Fini or doing massive amounts of damage to that Snorlax.
Maybe if the Bloom Doom goes into that Snorlax without the Intimidate and Porygon 2 is able to follow up with like an Ice Beam or something, we might have been able to see a knockout. A critical hit on the Bloom Doom also could help out here, but it's not looking likely. I think that Snorlax is going to stick around for a very long time, especially since it moved before the Porygon 2 and used that Recycle to find that berry once again.
Yeah, very, very good Intimidate from Alvin's side to mitigate the amount of damage that that Bloom Doom was going to do. Porygon 2 using Thunderbolt here, going to hit into the Snorlax, gonna hit it for just a little bit, but of course that Sacred Sword is definitely not in range.
It's definitely not in range. Again, we might be able to see something like a critical hit, but Snorlax would be more than happy to just recycle this turn, allow Arcanine to knock out that Kartana with something like a Flare Blitz. We know that it has the Grassium Z item. It's not going to have something like a Focus Sash tucked away, and not even a Leaf Blade critical hit, I think, would have allowed him to get that knockout, and Alvin just further solidifies a lead as the timer has only seconds left.
Yep, picks up the KO right there. Now Arsal has to find a way to be able to pick up 2 KOs very, very fast, but it looks like Snorlax, again, content on just using Recycle, so great way to, you know, shift gears in terms of Alvin's playstyle. You know, he was very defensive, really just protecting that Snorlax, and now he's like, well, I gotta pick up KOs, so I'm gonna do that, just straight up first turn Belly Drum.
Yeah, and we know that Arsal only has his Arcanine left in the back of his party, and we've seen a lot about this Arcanine. I think we've seen the Flare Blitz and a Snarl at one point, and an Extreme Speed. Not going to be moves that'll help him get knockouts here. If anything, maybe a Burn would allow him to not have only one Pokemon remaining when the timer hits 0 and we get the end of the +3 turns, but...
And I believe this is actually turn 0.
This is turn 0.
I believe this is turn 0. So Arsal has 3 turns to go ahead and try to seal the deal, but instead Arsal looks like he's going to go ahead and forfeit the match. So Alvin Hidayat, in an intense 3-game set going all the way to time, takes it.
Such a versatile style of play from Alvin. 2 games where he was playing hyper defensively, able to switch to hyper offense very easily. I love that Snorlax. Such an innovative combination of that stockpile and the belly drum.
Yeah.
And Heal Pulse on Tapu Fini. Like, that looked like such a fun team to play.
It's been growing in popularity. Of course, it does have its restrictions because when you only have access to 1 attack because you're stuck recycling, you're stuck stockpiling, you're stuck belly drumming, you know, it does only have 1 attacking move, which gets walled by a ghost type. So, yeah. I mean, it's definitely an interesting team.
It definitely is an interesting team, but I don't think there's been a lot of ghost types in the metagame right now. I think you can see Mimikyu sometimes. I would assume the Metagross is there to handle that situation.
Drifblim as well.
Drifblim as well, which could possibly be knocked out by
I think a
lot of things.
A Zen Headbutt in Psychic Terrain, which is usually what Drifblim operates in, is enough to pick up the KO. So a very well-structured team from Alvin. You know, it's so well designed because if you think about it, like, so many pieces just to protect that Snorlax. And then in the situation where in the game 3, I need KOs. I'm just going to set up a belly drum, and I'm going to go ahead and try to pick up those KOs right off the bat. So great adjustment from Alvin. But of course, Arsal also did a very good job as well.
He did. I really liked how he was managing the field throughout the games. Game 1, we saw him take the terrain advantage that got him that win. Game 2 still tried to keep it up, but just ultimately, I think he spent too much time sort of playing on the defensive in Game 2. I would have liked to see him go for a couple big plays, maybe towards the middle of that game, to try and get the momentum and lock it down in his favor. But still incredibly well played. I think he definitely has the tools to continue to do well here. He's already taken one loss, but that doesn't mean he's out of the running yet.
Not just yet. I think going back to Game 2, he may have clicked the forfeit button just a little bit early, but, in that situation, you kind of think to yourself, maybe I can take it in Game 3. I think, in hindsight, one of the things that he could have done was force Play Pokemon Match Resolution Rules 3.4.3 Sudden Death. I think if he forced that could have been a possible situation that he could have resolved.
That could have been a possible situation that he resolved, but he really had no way to stop that belly drum on the Snorlax other than the haze on the Tapu Fini, and he just decided not to bring it to that game.
Yeah, so intense set from both players. Arsal played his heart out. Of course, Alvin also hung in there. They must be both mentally exhausted because that match went all the way to time.
Yeah, and hopefully they're able to recover after this game. I think...
Alvin's got Snorlax. Of course he can recover.
Well, he can recycle.
Well, close enough. You can recover after you recycle, right?
Yeah, I just want to call out, though, we talked a little bit about how Alvin, he has his friends helping him out with that team, how Rajan's running something similar, probably an indication that they work together. I think it shows just how well the team's built. There was multiple people working on it, and I'd love to hear Alvin's thoughts about it.
Oh, absolutely, and I think we actually have Anna Prosser down on the floor with Alvin Hidayat, the winner of the previous match, so go ahead, take it away, Anna. We want to hear more.
Thanks, guys. I'm backstage with Alvin. Congratulations on that last match. You're all smiles back here. How are you feeling?
Hello, I'm feeling really good right now, but there's still 2 more to go, and I'm still pretty nervous, but we're gonna give it all.
Well, before we focus on what's next, let's talk about what just happened. There's so much to talk about in this match, especially at the end of the first game. Did you expect that ending?
I was hoping the Woodhammer would KO the Arcanine so I could knock out Coco with return, but the Arcanine surviving kind of did ruin a bit, but ruin that set. I mean, not ruin the set, sorry. Ruin my win.
Yeah, that game. And then you went into the next game that was kind of full of a lot of posturing, a lot of waiting for just the right moment. Tell us about that.
My game plan for all these games has been to set up Snorlax the end game, because I knew that if I managed my resources properly, he did not have good ways to take it out. And he played pretty well and managed to wear down my Bulu. And I had to make a pretty big read and got the HP fire off on the Kartana. And that was what sealed the game for him.
Yeah, and then you moved into that third game. And what changes did you make in that third game from what you had done in game 1 and 2, if any?
I went with the same lead because I thought it was the safest lead in general. When he led P2 Arcanine, I realized that it was a passive lead and I could set up Belly Drum right away. He went to his a Mudstales and set up Trick Room for me. I will not set up Trick Room for me. So just set up Trick Room. I set up Belly Drum and I went to Fini, erased the close combat damage with Heal Pulse and one-shot the Mudstale with return, and the game was kind of over from there.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people at home are watching and trying to identify what makes you such a successful player. Snorlax was a big deal in this series. If people are watching and want to learn how to really make the most out of Snorlax, can you tell them?
Snorlax is a Pokemon with a lot of stats, and I think the best way to use Snorlax is to have a lot of resources protecting it. It's a Pokemon that can very, very easily take over games, and if you do support it well, it will very often do that.
It did well for you. Congratulations again. And now you're here with me backstage. You said this is your first official interview. You were just on the stream. Tell the people at home what it's like to be here in person on the stage and at the North American International Championships.
I'm pretty ecstatic right now. Yeah. Oh, can I give shout-outs?
Sure, go ahead.
I'd like to give a shout-out to my friend Rajan Ball for making this team for me. He did not make it to day 2 going X3, but I will try my best to top cut for him.
That's awesome. I think one of the coolest things about the Pokemon community is how important it is to everyone to work together and give those shout outs to their friends. So thank you for that. And again, congratulations. Thank you for being here. And now it's time to head back to our casters.
Well said, Alvin. You know, friendship is strength. Friendship gives you power, just like how friendship and happiness gives Snorlax power when it uses return.
Yeah, so congratulations, Alvin. I'm looking forward to seeing this team, continue on in this tournament. It's so well constructed. I think it has a lot of very valuable tools, and the way that Alvin is playing it is just absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, well played set. I think we might be almost ready for the next round, but we're going to go ahead and toss to a quick break, and we'll return Swiss Round 13 here from Day 2 of the 2017 Pokemon North American International Championships.